My name is Jacob Rosenberg. Welcome to the EPICENTER Limited Series podcast. The intent of this show is to unpack some nuance and context around my upcoming book and show in San Francisco, which runs at GCS Agency from November 21st to January 11th. This show will be hosted by myself and my co-host, Ted Barrow. And really, we'll have a range of guests and a range of topics. It's sponsored in part by Adidas Skateboarding, by GCS Agency, by Formika Films, with production support from Mosaic. I think we'll just dive right into things, and the spirit of the show is really to just be conversational, to unpack what feels important to Ted and I about the history of skateboarding that the book focuses on, which is centered around Embarcadero. So where I want to start, Ted, and you're so good at this, it's one of the qualities I love about you. Give us the state of the union with Embarcadero. Where does it stand right now in terms of its demolition, and what is the state with the fountain and the future of the fountain?
Okay, thank you. And yeah, it's an honor to be a co-curator on this show and to be working so closely with you in your amazing archive and contribution. The State of the Union of Embarcadero, the plaza that was originally designed in 1971 by Lawrence Halprin and others, and the fountain, also 1971, by Armand Valancourt, is that it will likely be demolished within the next 2 years. In 2027, there will be no more fountain or brick plaza. And as someone who grew up skateboarding, and I started skating in 87, the Embarcadero scene was, from a distance, very, very influential for me. I realized that this is no longer the central hub, the epicenter skate spot that it once was, but it's still very important in our culture, as there are more and more older skaters who have a similar story to mine, but also younger skaters kind of figuring out and learning about the history. It's important to have these sites here. So there have been numerous efforts. I'm part of many of these, and I've had your support and other skaters to preserve the fountain, to preserve the plaza, to try to tell the story of this place and what it meant to skateboarding, because I think the import of that place and that scene and the story that we're going to be telling over the next few months is really about exporting plaza culture, urban skateboarding globally. The fountain, I believe, is going to be demolished in the next 18 months, and there will be no trace left of those bricks where basically modern street skateboarding was invented.
I want to rewind back a little bit to understand, like, a little bit from a city level, civic level, like how we get here. But James has a quote in the interview that I did with him in the paperback that accompanies the book, and he was like, I said to him, like, is it sad for you that EMB is gone? He was like, EMB was gone in '94. Yeah. So it's obviously very different than what it was. The filmmaker Bill Strobeck, wonderfully revitalized it to make it sort of central again and current and modern. It's the bones of it are still very much there when you take that fucking pickleball court out of it. But how do we get to this place? And because I think right now in the next, it's happened previously on the East Coast with a lot of plazas. Yep. But in the next 10 to 20 years, a lot of these sacred spaces for skateboarders, they're just going to be bulldozed and overhauled and become something different entirely.
Yeah. Well, I want to say that I absolutely know exactly I believe I understand what James Kelch is saying, that the plaza and the culture and EMB was done by 94. What he's talking about is the fact that by 94, the city of San Francisco had cracked down on that plaza so heavily that I had the experience of showing up there Christmas of 92 and having my board taken and getting taken to the Tenderloin police station and told not to go back to Embarcadero. Like, that was a common experience for people who wanted to come and skate that plaza from like 92 to 94.
Nothing would make you want to go back more than that experience.
Exactly. I went straight back to that plaza. After all, I was getting picked up there. Yeah. That was the only place my parents knew where I'd be. But, so I get that, but I also think that something needs to be said for the fact that people continued to skate Embarcadero, perhaps not in the same way, perhaps it was not the same hub, perhaps didn't mean the same thing to the locals even, up until its demolition, its remodeling at the end of the millennium. In the year 2000, they basically updated the plaza. You had those out ledges, you had the ledges going down the ramps on either side of where the 7 was. And what I think was really cool about what Strobeck did in the next, over the last 10 years is that people started to skate the rim of around the fountain. Yeah. And people started to skate the bricks because the bricks started to mean something because they'd been part of this story, without banging you over the head of like the historical significance of this plaza. You kind of understood that there was still something really meaningful here, which is a rare thing. So, yeah, these spots are getting demolished. I mean, something similar happened at JFK Plaza, Love Park in Philadelphia. But the difference is that plazas designed in the 60s around the country were often designed in granite and marble. And those granite and marble pieces could be taken apart piece by piece and then rebuilt in other places. So there's like a section of Love Park just as it was that has been rebuilt like this wonderful relic of mid-90s plaza or mid-20th century plaza design in Malmo, Sweden.
Yeah.
You will not
the
be
New York Times just released an article
about
it.
Will Staley just wrote a piece about this. And so I think people are starting to rethink and appreciate the significance of these plazas and these spaces to skateboarders and how people will continue to return to these places if they are still there or if they still exist in some form. I don't think that that's possible with Embarcadero because this is a brick and concrete plaza, and it would be very, very challenging to preserve any significant pieces of the brick surface.
Can you speak at all to how, you felt kind of hoodwinked through the process of being told that advocacy and these things of petitioning would work when in fact it really felt like there was this other agenda that was going on? Are you comfortable speaking about that? Am I tracking that narrative correctly?
Yeah, I can try to be diplomatic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so when the SF Rec Park and Boston Properties, BXP, who owns the Embarcadero Center, who have basically been in charge of maintaining or allowing the plaza to fall into neglect over the last 3 decades. They announced plans that they were going to remodel the plaza, and they wanted to create a new park at the foot of Market Street, right by the ferry building, that honored San Francisco's waterfront history, that presented San Francisco as the cultural touchstone and global cosmopolitan city that means so much to so many people, and really underscore the idea of San Francisco's waterfront as a destination for people. And I was like, yeah, it's been like that because of skateboarding for the last 40, 50 years or so. And so I was like, this is a no-brainer. Like, obviously, let's talk about Embarcadero. Let's talk about the thing that has brought skaters to San Francisco for, like I said, as long as skateboarding has existed. And skateboarding was not at all in the conversation. So I began a petition saying, save Embarcadero Plaza. I started writing op-eds for every newspaper outlet I could find in San Francisco and elsewhere, talking about the significance of this place. And that got me into meetings with the property owners and Rec and Parks. And, they're totally open to hearing about, they loved hearing about how important this place was for skateboarding. It's something they didn't really, I think, appreciate and understand. And these are reasonable people. They're cool, but they also have multiple other objectives and the different stakeholders that they have to, include. And so the notion that they would preserve any part of this hardscaped plaza that, from their perspective is outdated, and no longer functions the way that it once did, that is not a possibility for them. So, the best case scenario is that we get something in the new design that honors the past plaza. Maybe there will be something that's good for skateboarders. Maybe that will be an authentic urban plaza. We don't know yet. But unfortunately, the other side of that is that we lose whatever remains of that original plaza. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that I was hoodwinked, but I do think that, this consortium of like municipal departments and private property owners, they met with me because of PR. They met with me.
Yeah. I mean, once the wheels start turning with these big mechanisms,
Yep.
a small cog is just going to get crushed in the gears.
And
they just needed to make sure that you were.
They wanted to make sure that I was appeased and that I felt like I was part of the process. But there were plans.
You were heard.
Yeah.
You were so heard.
But there were plans. Exactly. I felt seen.
You felt seen and heard.
Their plans.
It's like, yay.
Yeah.
But fuck, they're still going to fucking dose this thing.
These plans were underway years before they ever even announced their plans.
That's what I mean by the hoodwink, is that there was these plans. And to me, that is the hoodwink, is that those plans get made behind closed doors. There's handshakes and deals, and I'm not going into any conspiracy thing, but that's just how civic things get done with people who are in office and people who have power in these different parks and recs and different things. And what happens is they build so much momentum around these things because those are the people that can get this done.
Yep.
And then by the end of that, you come in and you think, hey, I can be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And the reality is it's a little too late for that.
Well, I think also the reality is that the whole history of this plaza, as pertains to skateboarding, which I would love to get into pretty soon, is that this was something that was designed at a very optimistic time in the late 1960s and early 1970s. They were hoping that this complex of like shopping malls, office towers, new residential high-rises and office buildings surrounding the Embarcadero, which had been a former produce market and neglected. And you had this post-industrial waterfront and a double-decker freeway that emptied out onto Washington and Clay Street. They were hoping that this new complex of buildings would bring people into the city. And for a while it did, but the 70s happened. There was an economic recession. By the 80s, people aren't really going downtown as much anymore. And so skateboarding happens there. And this plaza became a hub at a time when there was probably less tenancy in the buildings. There was less security to patrol those plazas and those spaces. There was less police activity, less police attention. So it's kind of a miracle that skateboarding happened there. And so I think in many ways, the reason why that plaza became what it became, besides the supreme talent of the skateboarders and the charisma of that scene and the people that like yourself that documented it, is because the city kind of like turned a blind eye to that place.
Well, I think that's the era that we grew up in.
Yeah.
Is there was these financial things that were going on that allowed for a lot more open and unused spaces to be occupied by the misfits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could tell that story could be told in almost any city and any scene.
I was watching, your post about Wilshire Boulevard, the 3000 block.
Yeah.
And that's the story there.
Absolutely.
It's like, how could you skate beneficial? Because no one cared.
No one cared. Exactly. Yeah. These are,
and you could get kicked out if someone was in the area, but you just come back.
Yeah. And every skate spot kind of owes its existence in some ways to an economic recession where they couldn't hire security to patrol this private property.
Yeah. So interesting. Well, let's transition into the book. Thank you for unpacking that. I think we could talk ad nauseum about the minutia of these things, because I think it's important for people to kind of grasp how these things happen. And maybe later in the series, we'll talk about creative ideas that we think are cool for commemorating it. Yeah. But I want to talk about when we first connected, when the seeds for the book kind of came together. And my recollection is that I had just finished Right Before My Eyes. I was like a mad sprint, released it, and was like, I'm like totally smoked. not comfortable promoting myself, but I got to kind of do it because I paid for the book myself. And you hit me up and you had hit me up kind of early in the fall, and you're like, hey, I got this show at SFPL. I'd love to use your images for it. And of course I'm like, cool. And then you were finally like, dude, my deadline is Friday. But you asked for a folder. I think you told me, like, I want to see whatever you have from EMB. And I, respect you so much for your curation of history and storytelling of history that I was like, fuck, I got to do right by Ted. So I went, into my binders, and I found pretty much every single photo I'd ever shot at EMB. I think there was like 160 or 180 photographs.
Yeah, we've narrowed it down to about 90. Yeah.
I sent you this Dropbox link, and I personally get excited when I share stuff in the archive, because I know how much it means to people to get a glimpse into that era, and I feel so fortunate for being there. But I'd love for you to describe that process from your standpoint, and then, shortly thereafter, you said to me, you got to make the book. So let's just get into that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, I think I want to go a little further back first because, through my work with the show that I do, This Old Ledge, I think we first got in contact.
Yeah.
And you FaceTimed me and you're like, hey, check out this footage. What do you think about
this?
this?
Well, I was pissed because I saw your EMB episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, what a shame.
I know.
That
I blew it.
We weren't homies. You didn't blow it, but that's the thing in skateboarding is, like, I think a lot of times you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Not the thing in skateboarding. That's the thing in life.
Yep.
And particularly when you're working on documentary pieces, you don't know who has what footage. But I try to be pretty open. I try to be pretty available. And I always want those things to have the personality footage of the skaters.
Of course.
So that you feel the humanity, not the tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. We got in contact through This Old Ledge, and I came and visited you in your office where we sit right now.
Yeah.
And you were just showing me these archives of, like Rick Howard and, like Mike and Sean Sheffy and all this stuff, all this background footage of virtual reality and questionable that I had never seen. I don't think anyone has yet ever seen. Yeah. And I was so blown away because, again, these are iconic moments and iconic videos that became the kind of touchstone for my generation and every subsequent generation in skateboarding. So being able to see just 5 seconds of footage of what happened that didn't make it in the video, to me is golden. Right. From a historical perspective, of course, but also just in terms of learning more about this culture that we've devoted our lives to, that I absolutely love. I don't think I'm alone in that. So when I was doing my show at SFPL, I thought, obviously, Jacob Rosenberg's archive, he must have things. You filmed so many of those seminal early video parts that I was like, I bet he has some stuff. I've seen all the sort of a lot of the early EMB stuff. And when you started showing me photos, it something clicked in my head, and it actually changed what I was going to focus on in the show that I did at SFPL. Skateboarding San Francisco, concrete community continuity. I was like, what I am seeing is something I've never seen before. Was the moment before Embarcadero blew up, the moment before Mike Carroll's questionable part was filmed, was released, the moment before Rick's stuff in the New Deal videos came out. I'm seeing and I think that that's so important because what your presence and your contribution and the people that you worked with demonstrate was what a local scene this was, Yeah. And to me, as I said before, Embarcadero influenced the world of skateboarding.
Yeah.
Skateboarding was small in 1990 and 1991. It was small, isolated pockets. So for you to have had unimpeded access to that scene, that crew, those were your friends, and you recorded them, that tells the backstory of a movement that impacted everyone. So I was blown away. And I knew that, after recording the ride at the Museum of Moving Image in New York and right before my eyes at Heavyweight and releasing your own book, these were passion projects for you, but this was not your full-time job. So if I was going to do something with you and if we were going to work together, I had to strike while the iron was hot.
Yeah.
Now I just want to first acknowledge and thank you for your contribution to my library show.
Yeah. It was amazing. It was an honor. I mean,
that was amazing. I
filmed James Kelch awling that fence with that weird homeless guy praying in
where
front
the
of
library is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Having, I think the best description of what you contributed to that show comes from Frank Gerwer, where he was, we had a display case with your camera, with your recorder, with different Hi8 tapes, and it's John Cardiel, Dogtown, Rick Ibiceta here, Mike James, Chico, etc. And Frank Gerwer was like, this is basically the producer of Sgt. Pepper's, showing you the thing that he recorded this on. And I was like, that's absolutely, if you think about the importance of the Beatles and that album and that moment in the history of pop music, this is our Sgt. Pepper's moment in skateboarding, and you're the person who made that happen. So to be able to just get a glimpse, I don't know how many photos of yours we use, less than 10 probably.
Yeah.
But just to have that be a little preview of what was to come, which is what this is, was really great for me. And it completely carried the show. We had
so kind of you.
Yeah,
I very much feel like a participant in that era, right place and right time. I definitely, I think in the Mike Ternowski and the Sloshbach and myself, we're, not to say we're the George Martins, because that maybe feels thinking too much of yourself, but you happen to be at the right place at the right time with the right thing happening in front of you, and your passion ensures that you're there to capture it.
It's partly timing, it's partly talent.
Yeah.
So, and
the lack of talent to me from that era is what I love about looking in my archive is I just see not great photographs, but because they're not great, magazines wouldn't American magazines wouldn't run my photos.
Yeah.
European mags would because I had access to all these kids, but American magazines wouldn't run my photos because they weren't good photos.
There's something, that's the other thing that I think is so important about that period too, is that everything is kind of figuring it out. Tricks come in, like pressure flips, late shove-its, all that kind of stuff, and tricks get phased out. Like rails on your board or tail guards or cell blocks or whatever. These things are coming in and out because everyone's 14, 15, 16 years old, trying new things. And so what I love about your photographs is, they are raw. They are unprofessional. You are learning the medium while you're doing it. Yeah. You just happen to be learning the medium with the most supremely talented and interesting subjects in skateboarding.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's this wonderful kind of relationship and exchange between yourself and your subject. There's obviously a friendship, but there's also a kind of generosity and patience on both sides. You have to be generous.
Idolatry, I worship these guys. I was as much of a fan as anybody. Yeah. I felt so lucky, and I took a lot of shit for it at that age. That was kind of psychologically how I was wired, but it was. I felt lucky. If Mikey wanted me to pick him up, I'm like, Mike Harrell wants me to pick him up from his house to go skating. Yeah. At a certain point in San Diego, we're tired of each other. But at that moment in Embarcadero, I felt like, oh, wow, I get to go here every day or not. And I didn't go every day, but I went a lot. Yeah. Consistently, weekly, by, multiple days a week sometimes. And,
well, one of the things I think that, you've talked about this elsewhere, but I think it's important to note that, and this is the way that I would describe your contribution and what your work introduces in skateboarding for my show and also for this, is that this is your way to find a place in skateboarding and to work in skateboarding and to participate when, a lot of 90% of the people who skate you're an average skateboarder. You're not going to be a professional skateboarder, but you right, exactly. But you found a way not only to like privilege and platform your friends and the people around you, the people that you grew up skateboarding with, anyone from like Aaron Curry, James Telch, Andrew Huberman, whoever. And then that, what we focus on in this book and in this upcoming exhibit is the way in which your local scene and your local world of scene of skateboarders kind of expands and starts to spin outward with this centrifugal force, encompassing more places, encompassing more people, and eventually sort of evolving into music, into hip hop, into like this whole other world. It's like the span of this show from 1989, 1990 or so.
There's work from 89.
Yeah. Like we're
88. There's work from 80. The David Tullis and with the head,
you can see
that's with the head, with the speakers on his ears is 88. Yeah.
You see the skateboards change, you see the fashions change, you see the tricks change, and you also see the people grow up in this time. Yeah. But it also really does chart the late 80s kind of nadir of skateboarding into skateboarding and independent hip hop becoming like more mainstream, and kind of these people growing up and these careers coalescing. Yeah. And I think that that's a really important story and contribution to honor.
You said to me, and I don't know if you said it casually or you thought about saying it. I'm curious to know your answer because we haven't talked about this. But you said to me, like, you got to make the EMB book now. Yeah.
Well, I just think.
But you said that back then. You looked at those photos for SFPL. You're like, you got. I'm like, I just finished a book.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was. Yeah. Unfortunately, the book did well, and I feel so satisfied with that experience. But I was just like, fuck, dude. Like, what was it just, and you also said it's gonna be, and then that's when I was like, fuck you. You were like, it's gonna be gone next year, Jacob. You're like, in January of 2026, they're gonna start fucking demolishing it. And I was like, he's like, so you're like, you have to do it now.
Yeah. Well, there are numerous reasons for that. One, because I wanted to work on it with you, and I think, and
go Ted.
My background as an art historian also recognizes the difference of the different significance and place that different media has. Yeah. Video is great. Yeah. But as you well know, video inevitably declines over time. Yeah. The quality of the images gets fuzzier and fuzzier no matter how many like good copies of the archives you can rip. People's access to this information will inevitably change too. Yeah. Books certainly suffer the same fate, but that's a different temporal scope. And so I just think that selfishly, I want more stories about Embarcadero, more stories about all of these skate spots, and more stories about these scenes and these people who shaped our culture, this culture that I devoted my life to. Yeah. But I also think that, it's important. There hasn't been a book about Embarcadero.
Yeah, well, that's why I initially was so reticent to do it. I've been asked many times, like, why don't you make the EMB documentary? And maybe if I feel like I know the right way in. I mean, I kind of think I know the right way in, but I don't know if I want to do that. And I think that I am very. Insecure is the wrong word. I'm very cautious and delicate. And this was a guiding principle with making this book about saying EMB and making it about me. Right. EMB is not about me. And my essay for the book, it's short and succinct and to the point, which was my essay that I found the title through.
Epicenter.
Yeah. And the slight tangent is just Epicenter for me is very important because I come from a part of the country that is on a fault line. Mm-hmm. So my whole life I grow up and it's like, where was the epicenter of the earthquake? Where was the the Loma Prieta, the epicenter? Oh, it was in Santa Cruz. You were always concerned with the epicenter, but then with Embarcadero, it truly was, for me, it was like, yeah, that was the fucking epicenter.
Yeah.
But so back on track, you know, I just am very sensitive. Like, you know, Henry Sanchez deserves all the credit for EMB.
I mean,
Mike Carroll deserves all the credit. James Kelch deserves all the credit. Like all these guys. But the hard thing is if you just, you know, tell your own story and you're the person just telling it and talking it, there's just a limit to that scope. And
I've if I could just jump in.
Yeah, please.
I've also noticed years back it's actually funny that this is what we're doing now, but I had the inkling to start having the oral history of skate spots be recorded because I knew that these people were around now, but they may not be around in 20 years. And my pilot episode or whatever it was, my pilot project was the Banks. I was living in New York, and I found that the people who had the best stories were the people who came in from New Jersey or came in from the outer boroughs or surrounding.
Dude, that's because when they got there, they went like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they looked and they like, I remember the day that blah, but like Connor Doherty, our mutual friend, is like, you know, I was there when Carroll kickflipped up the 3. And I was like, okay, but he remembers that vividly. And I found the raw footage and like, you know, he's probably sitting off to the side of that, but you remember those things as an outsider going in. And to be very, very fair and honest, which is important to me in the narrative of this book and this show, is I was an outsider to, I didn't live in San Francisco. I lived in Palo Alto. I lived, 30 some odd miles south. I drove up there when I went up there.
Yeah, there's something about that distance and something about the excitement of getting to visit a place maybe once or twice a week in your case.
Yeah.
In my case, it was once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And then I would come back to Austin and I would tell all my friends like, hey, I saw Henry Sanchez do this. I saw Lee Smith. There's this guy, Marcus McBride. He has a dope style, like blah, blah. Like we hung on to every shred of information we could possibly hoard from San Francisco because it was the epicenter. Those tremors were felt no matter how distant from that scene, all the way in Central Texas, and so, it turns out that the people, I mean, not everyone can be James Kelch. Not everyone can tell those stories, remember nearly everything, and have such a beautiful way of putting it. One of the things that really came across in that roundtable interview you did with like Rick Ibiceta, Mike Carroll, James Kelch, and yourself, for me, that was such a pleasure to read because I was like, it's rare that you actually have the central players being able to describe a scene with such vivid intensity and recall so many like granular details. You get a sense of the smell of that place from those interviews.
Yeah, that was it. We had 3 conversations over the course of about a month. It was hard to nail people down. And then I had a couple one-on-one conversations, and you wove that together so well.
It was hard. It was like,
it was really
there was
hard.
Not one part.
I'm sure you were intimidated too, because you're like, I got to do this justice.
Yeah.
But I think the thing to me that was so special about that interview was like, we're all grown ass men, and James is such a fascinating and, really wonderful person. Rick, married with his daughter, still just tremendous sense of style, this passion, this sweetness.
Yeah.
Mikey now has his daughter, married, happy, but again, our group chat for that roundtable was incredible because they're like blood and they're capping on each other, and it was just really funny. But we'd finish a conversation and James would be like, y'all want to talk about EMB some more? And then, it was very genuine.
I mean, that's one of those things like you have it with friends, you have it with family where it's like the dynamic gets crystallized. Yeah. And all it takes is just, you got to scratch the surface and you're right back in that time. Yeah. You're right back in that place. Yeah. One of the things that was so cool for me to read, and as I was editing it, was to see that in some cases, not all cases, but like, you forget that like Rick's older than Mike. The James is older than Mike. The James was the sort of like center of that scene and the kind of elder statesman.
He's like known as the mayor because in that time, the people that came there, he was the enforcer. Yeah. But people don't really know, like he's actually the tether from the previous generation. Right. The original Embarcaderians, like the people who were there kind of first. And you encountered those people with your show, and they have a real ownership stake in that becoming a spot in the first place. And I'm super sensitive to that history because I don't want to say that didn't happen. That of course that happened. You don't have the modern history without that history.
Yeah, that's also important. From the outside, Embarcadero was always a spot that you saw in videos. You see it in Shackle Me Not, you see it in Hocus, you see it in Animal Chin. But that much. Yeah, you even see it like Bryce Kanites does a Wally on a trash can in Sick Boys, and you get a little glimpse of the bricks in the fountain. Yeah. But and there was a crew of skaters and a crew of dudes that would hang out at that plaza. Yep. Some of them skated, some of them didn't, some of them were graffiti writers. And they were that older generation. Yeah, Thorn. Exactly. Yep. And there were younger skaters who we're still kind of following the Tommy Guerrero model of like skating the avenues, skating Fort Miley, skating the entire city of San Francisco. Yeah. I think what your book and this project is able to capture, like I said, is that moment when skateboarding kind of shifts. And these are dark days for skateboarding. So the people who survived the kind of like end of the 80s in San Francisco, a younger generation, all start to kind of coalesce and hang out in this place. And it goes from being like Justin Herman Plaza or Embarcadero or whatever you want to call it, the wave, to EMB, and the people who skate there are Embarcaderians. And at first that's, a derogatory term. It's right.
Or Mikey felt embarrassed that, because people were teasing him. You're going there too much.
But then all of a sudden it, with the advent of the handheld video camera and people to film these tricks, those tricks gain this currency that everyone in skateboarding responds to. Yeah. And I start looking for spots that look like Embarcadero, whether they have a brick surface or a rounded concrete ledge where you can do, no slide nose grinds. Shout out Sam Smythe. Like, you start to be like, oh wow, there's something really here. It's not just these like weird concrete steps. There's like something happening here that I don't think is happening anywhere else.
Well, and I think that's that subliminal social vibration thing that's happening. Yeah. Where like I think historically skate spots have been, there are spots where everyone would come, and there'd be a ton of people. But then when you get out of California and in other smaller areas where skating is a little bit smaller and it's just more pure, you get people who show up at a spot together and it's just a couple people. Yep. And even with a couple people, you can form this rich dynamic of pushing each other and like, oh dude, what's his name? Frontside 180 down the 5 stair today. When you magnify that in that plaza setting, like you understood that it was limitless. And that to me is the story that I was fortunate to witness, because my time from 90 to 93 there is, the early stuff, Mikey's like, back tail on the big block, switch big spin down the 7. That's some of the earliest stuff we kind of filmed. Frontside big spin down the big 3, or switch big spin down the big 3. Yeah. Ollie 1 foot into the fountain. I mean, just describing those tricks, like, you just went from like the kind of powerful, like H Street influenced street skating of the late 80s, a backside tailside on the big ledge, next to the 7, to a switch frontside big spin down the big 3. That jump is the jump from late 80s to early 90s. Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things I want to pull back a little bit, because you're also, all the obstacles you described were not designed by Lawrence Halpern. They were designed by a guy named William Turnbull. And he weirdly enough designed flagpoles too. Flagpoles by the water. Yeah. So in 1919, that actually makes perfect sense. Yeah. I filmed a lot of the Think video, Mako. Yeah. And I forget that other guy's name, but Mako has some clips there.
Absolutely.
At flagpoles.
Yeah,
Darren.
Yep. So William Turnbull Jr., who also designed Sea Ranch and a number of like kind of like really important architectural, with Halprin. He designed flagpoles. He designed the C block or the pyramid. Yeah. He extended what had been the little concrete platform next to the wave of the original plaza, and that became the 7, and we're talking about that ledge. He added the pavilion, the little theater on the side.
Yeah.
And his daughter, Connor, is also an architectural historian and preservationist. She explained to me that what these architects wanted and intended was a place for kind of open-ended activity, and it kind of served that purpose in the early 70s, It was also basically
not like it did in the early 90s.
Exactly. It was also basically, let's face it, it was a sunken food court for the outdoor shopping mall that was the Embarcadero Center. Yeah. This was, yes, it was designed next to a freeway, but like that open-endedness, which is what every skateboarder that skated there can talk about. You learn a trick on the bottom third stair on the curb. Yep. Then you take it to a ledge. Then you take it to this what was then called the C block. Then you take it to the big ledge.
Yep.
You do a trick down the 3 stairs where you spend a lot of time.
Yep.
Then you take those tricks to the big 3. Then you take it to the 7.
Yeah.
Maybe you take it to the Gons.
Yeah.
There was an open-endedness about this spot that you had every single obstacle you would want to skate at that moment in street skating, while at the same time they were rugged, they were harsh, these were not. This wasn't brown marble, this wasn't black rock. This was like harsh, chunky concrete.
I think that just is like so indicative of San Francisco, just
absolutely
in general, particularly in the 80s into the 90s, and just how like rough and rugged the city felt.
Still is,
for sure.
I mean, that's the fundamental. Sure. I think that's what it's a nature nurture thing, right? But like I think that is what produced this, like I say, supremely talented generation of skateboarders, and continues to foster skateboarding at its most
there's
intense.
Also like we're all latchkey kids at that time, so there is this like, I want to be out of my house, I want to be away, I don't want to go home, and then you take that social swelling of not to say peer pressure, but like that thing that skateboarding is so good at, of motivating each other through the crew mentality. And like, all I can think of is, Henry, he would just get a trick in his head, and he was really, Mikey sometimes could just fuck off with it and be like, and be over it and not keep going. Mm-hmm. I just remember Henry was like, oh, well, I'm going to switch stance, pop shove it, the little 3 today. Like, what? Like, pop it and catch it, like, for real.
Yeah.
And he would get, something in his field of view, and he would do it. Yeah. I think he had a real scary focus ability.
Well, I try to, I give a lot of like, I take people through Embarcadero these days, and I always begin that story where you probably spent a lot of time at the bottom of the 3 stairs by the T-Dog trap.
Yeah.
Because there are 1,000 little pockmark marks.
Yeah.
Like on the bricks, those little divots, and those came.
It's,
I think.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands. Yeah. And the way I introduce that idea to people who don't skate, I'm like, when we started skateboarding in the mid to late 80s, if you were a street skater, your board didn't flip. Maybe Tommy does a kickflip in Savannah Slamma. Mark and Nadas Gons and Nadas are doing them on banks here and there. That's a freestyle trick. But in that period that you started going to Embarcadero and you started documenting the scene, you could not survive as a street skater if your board didn't flip.
Yeah.
Every single axle mark at the bottom of those stairs on the bricks is the story of skateboarding becoming what you described with Henry Sanchez. It's not simply just flowing and doing like whatever trick feels natural. Yeah. It is forcing yourself to do something that has never been done before, that's going to take hundreds
until you land it.
Yeah, dozens if not hundreds of tries.
Yeah.
And like, it's rare that your board lands perfectly primo so that it will make a mark on the ground. So those marks probably represent 30 tries each, just the one time that your board landed on its side.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's so amazing because, outsiders see skateboarders never land anything and they don't understand the point of it. But skateboarders are learning determination and commitment and doing something phenomenally amazing with their board and their feet and their body that happened on those bricks, And so I just think that that's, again, like outside of the personalities, and those, I believe this project does a good job of honoring those people.
Yeah.
It's this new pathology. It's this new way of approaching the city and embracing and exploring and innovating these spaces that I think is the great testament to that era and that place and those people.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the book a little bit. I know you wanted to talk about some things.
Yeah. So I mean, we've kind of talked around this, but one of the things that I really like about the book, before we get into the design, which I think is so unique and so cool, is just the span. Like it goes from like Palo Alto. I'm not sure if we kept any photos of your driveway, but
well, the show goes from Palo Alto. The show goes from Palo Alto to sort of EMB and Hiro.
Yes, yeah. And I just think that that's such a cool, because I think most people, we all start skating on our driveway, and then we meet kids down at the grocery store, and then we go skate downtown, and we might meet kids from, in your case, like San Jose, and then the circle kind of expands and expands.
Yeah.
But the book focuses on the epicenter, on the plaza, and one of my favorite details, and I'm just staring at the cover now, is just so much of Embarcadero was the sound of bricks.
Yeah.
It comes across in your videos. It comes across, like I can't hear the Beastie Boys or Hiro without Mike Carroll's wheels on those bricks.
I was there recently, scouting the space where the show will be, which is so beautifully at GCS Agency at 201 Jackson Street, which is right around the corner from Hubba Hideout, 3 blocks from EMB. Yep. And I was there, and of course, and by the way, it's totally oblivious to this, I was there and the chimes went off.
Oh, man.
And if I hear the chimes and I look at the bricks, I am moved to tears.
Yeah.
Something about the patina of those bricks now, they're aged, some of them have grass in them, which I think is like a really charming quality. But it is, the bricks are the foundation, and they're so incongruent to the act of skateboarding that, the colorway that my designer, Alexander Hansford, and Greg Hunt was my creative director for the book. That brick colorway needed to be core, to it.
Well, not only is it core to the colorway and the entire design of the book, but it's also core to the tactile, the haptic experience. There's a brick pattern embossed on the cover of the book, which I think is so cool. Because at a certain point, and this is why I'm so delighted with how this book was executed, we won't feel those bricks, And one of my favorite photos.
Actually, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
That, the cover with the embossed pattern that Alexander made is touchable.
Yeah.
In that way. That's a great.
I mean, it's funny, but every skateboarder does this.
We made the cover so that it was touchable.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so you could actually handle it and not stare at it.
Yeah.
But there's also something, we all did this growing up, whether you had a fingerboard or not. I probably have done this while I'm talking today. I've been Smith grind on the edge of my fingers, with the tips of your fingers.
Right.
There is something that the way that we imagine space and the way that we explore space and surface that I think comes from skateboarding is just through deeply engaging with it by touching it. And I think that that's right in the book. I don't want to over determine that reading, but I think that that's such a cool choice. I mean,
I'll take, the beautiful thing about making a book is that it can mean whatever it means to the person that's holding it.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of thought and intent into what we did.
Yeah. I think I want to jump into one of the pages because I just love this. I felt a little conflicted about this, but it's such a cool photo. But there's, because Javante Turner arguably has one of the most beautiful, graceful styles, such pop, such like finesse.
Yep.
And we have this photo, I mean, we have photos of him doing 360 flips, but we also have this photo that you took of him just doing this nose manual with the fountain behind him.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I must have seen this photo on the screen, 3 dozen times.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I actually saw a print that I noticed that his wheels are going the long direction of the
Yeah, and the fisheye curves it so it has this swelling feeling.
Yeah, and that's
one of my favorite photos in the book.
There's a lot of information there because an outsider may not know, or someone who's never been to Embarcadero may not know that people skate in a certain direction around those bricks because the pattern of the bricks sort of radiates outward from the fountain, and you sort of had to find your line there because if you're going against those bricks,
it chatters too much.
Especially when wheels get tiny. I just thought that was such a cool. Just a little. Yeah,
that photo it's interesting. Those photos come from the work that I was doing for No Way magazine in France, and I was documenting the San Francisco scene. And that photo is a still from a sequence of him doing shove it, nose wheelie, shove it out.
Right.
And which no American magazine would have carried that sequence, but he's wearing that beautiful yellow Gonz shirt.
Yeah.
And
like cuffed blue jeans, right?
Yeah, cuffed blue jeans, black pants, black shoes.
Yeah.
And just, pretty much every time he's on a board, he's aesthetically pleasing to look at. But yeah, also, but that photo for me, what I love about that photo too is the fountain. There's two of those photos in a row, which again, Greg Hunt, who edited the photo flow of the book, I felt way too close to the material and felt like I could not make a decision on what was right to be in the book. But Greg loved the idea of these two photos back to back, and they're really great because the first photo, you kind of feel it, and then that second photo, you see the fountain directly behind him. Yeah. And for me now, that photo becomes it's going to become more and more and more and more and more timeless for me. The other thing about that photo is it's a weird fucking angle.
Yeah.
There's not really going to be many flatland photos at EMB that far away from the fountain. You're either going to be at the curb, or you're going to be looking in the direction of the big three, or like the Tobin photo of Mikey with the wave right there. But I was basically, my back is to the big three, and I'm shooting him right there. Yeah, and it just, for whatever reason, that's the thing that I love about those old photographs is I just wherever it was happening, I'm like, oh.
It's one of those things though where it's funny because I was visiting LA right now. I was watching that documentary, Los Angeles Plays Itself. And it's about how the city of Los Angeles, when it shows up in movies, can be read as in all these different ways, but paying attention to the backdrop, which is something that we skateboarders don't actually do a lot. Like we look at the obstacle the skateboarders skating, what trick they're doing, what they're wearing, how what position their body's in and whatever. But there's something really special about this book that balances now we're looking more wistfully at the fountain, at the plaza, at the pattern of the bricks, at those ledges that are already gone, at this landscape that will inevitably change. Yeah. But at the time, obviously the point is Javante doing a pop shove it nose manual, shove it out, or whatever. Yeah. I also just think, I just love that. And we had an issue of No Way, the issue, for the show.
No Way being the French magazine that I photographed for.
Which is, again, the reason I thought that was so important to put that in my library show is I was like, see, like this shows, like this demonstrates that this scene is being disseminated and
we'll have that photo in the show, that photo of Aaron Curry, which was my first cover. I still can't believe someone published it. That's not in the book. And that was an interesting conversation with me and Greg because it was like, there were other photos of Aaron that showcased the plaza in a better way. Yep. And almost in a way, it was too good of a was too good of a photo. And it had a different quality to it because it's like actually like a good flash photography skate photo, which for me at that time in my life, I wasn't as good. I was getting better and better and better. You know, my editor, Jeff Lubrano from No Way Magazine, was pushing me, but that photo will inevitably be in my next book.
Yeah. But so some of the photos that I really was drawn to that you had were the ones where nothing's going on, where it's, you know, Henry like carrying his board, or just people like with their board set up about to like head towards like the, you know, the C block or whatever. Yeah. Just looking south down the Embarcadero from the plaza. There's something kind of wonderful about the empty quality of that place. 'Cause one, I never experienced the plaza empty. When I would come 1992 onwards, there are 400 kids there. Most of them not from San Francisco. Yeah. Most of them not from that scene.
Yeah.
So being able to see not only the plaza, which has changed, but also it being populated by a select few skateboarders, most of whom are your friends and subjects in this project, that to me felt really rare.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I'm sure it was probably a thing for No Way where I was just shooting it. But I know I was there early with Henry one morning, and James was there too, because it's the same session where it's kind of overcast in the morning, and James is wearing that 8th Street shirt, and Henry's wearing a brown shirt. And I had those two photographs of Henry approaching the bottom 3 block. And then I have a reverse shot of that, and he's almost in the exact same position. So it's like perfect continuity. But I think the interesting thing for me when I went back in the archive and I looked at this is I think one of the challenges with curating your own work, and particularly with work that's involved around the act of skateboarding, I think like I look at like Grant Britton's book. I would never utter my name in a sentence with Grant Britton, to be very, very clear. Grant Britton was on my wall growing up, and he inspired me the same way Stacy Peralta inspired me to want to document and film and capture skateboarding. But like Grant's book feels like the hits, and it's so incredible. The moment I finished Grant's book, I'm like, I want to see every bad Grant Britton photo. Yeah. I want to see it now, because I think all those mistakes and all those weird things is a little bit like the props from Sgt. Pepper's. Yeah. You know, like we've seen so much of this stuff, but what you haven't seen is like EMB totally empty in 1991, right, with Henry Sanchez literally skating by himself in the middle of this plaza. Yeah. You know, and to me, what that communicates is like, oh my God, I wish I knew I could go and no one would be there. Yeah. Yeah. You know, and so I really credit Greg with feeling, right? So much of making a book, and Greg is expert in this, and Alexander's design instincts are expert as well. But that feeling your way through how the book moves through the plaza and moves through the moments and the energy and the people. Yeah. And you really, it is not an insane number of photographs. There's an insane number of frame grabs in the book.
As there should be. As befits a place that was defined by the videos that were shot there.
But I think that, you know, it's important that you think more about your feeling than what about you think what you think your audience wants. Yeah. And I feel pretty strongly that if I was going to make a book about EMB, it couldn't be about me. It needed to be about the place. Yep. And the best way to make a book about the place would be to have a lot of photos of the place. And I just happened miraculously to shoot a lot of photos of the place.
So this is, I'm so glad you landed there, because I was about to be like, yes, you know, most documentaries and most projects within skateboarding focus on the people, and the people are of supreme importance. But it's very rare that you get a project that is rooted in place. And that's what I think distinguishes this project. You know, yes, it's absolutely your subjects and your contribution is all about a personal connection and a chosen family and a community that formed there.
Yeah.
You know, as ragtag and intimidating and typical of like dudes in their mid to late teens as it could be, but very few projects about any skate scene have ever been able to focus and show so vividly the character of the place.
Well, and I think for me, like that, you get the place and you get the people through the photography, but I think the aspect of the book that I'm most proud of is the literary companion paperback with the book, because one, I got to bring in people I deeply respect, and two, I got to let people speak for themselves.
Right.
And I think it's super important that this goes back to my note about the EMB doc and people telling EMB stories and people claiming certain aspects in history. And I think it's important that we all tell our stories. I mean, what am I doing? I'm telling my story. I am through the work. But part of my story is these are the people that I encountered that I looked up to that changed my life. My ability to document them changed my trajectory in life, and they were the center of my passion. But I think for me it was essential. Like, you know, when I was having a conversation with, you know, one of the early roundtable conversations with Mike, Rick, and James, and Shrugi's name came up, and they were like, yeah, you know, Shrugi sponsored Henry. And it's like I kind of knew that and I remembered that, but I didn't like remember. And Shrugi ended up coming to my Right Before My Eyes show. He actually traveled to LA and made it a point to see the show, and he was speechless. And he really understands the roles that you and I are trying to take of curation and storytelling around skateboarding to help show people, like, do this. Tim Anderson does that incredibly well. Our buddy Eric Swisher does that from a literary standpoint, an interview standpoint, incredibly well. Yeah. So Secret Tape, like all but we still need more of that, and we need more voices to capture that. But Shrugi and I really connected in that moment because, you know, he remembers me and I remember him from that era. And all of a sudden it was like, I think I need to interview Shrugi.
Of course you do.
And get his story with that. And of course that story is the original, you know, Shrugi's real story, which I think is important for skateboarding to capture because he doesn't self-promote in that way.
Yeah.
And so in that way, the book offers that insight as a companion to offering the photographs that capture the moment that all of these stories are around.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, the mainstream history of skateboarding is told through companies, but really those companies exist and came around through the personal relationships between people, you know? And I think that, like, it is a cool moment that, like, Reel has just started. Henry's one of the first writers, you know, and that's coming through Shrugi. Plan B is just beginning. Yeah. These are still companies that exist today. Yeah. These are like legacy skateboard brands that did not exist at the beginning of the span of this.
But ultimately those companies aren't catalysts for the skating at the spot.
No, it's the people.
They're catalysts for motivating and reinforcing the skating at the spot.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Henry, I'm sure, I don't know this because I haven't spoken to him, but I'm sure Henry felt seen and motivated and excited to be sponsored by Shrugi, who was starting this new company, and Henry wasn't sponsored by anyone else prior to that.
Right.
You know, so like that's got to feel really good.
Yeah. I mean, every skateboarder kind of grows up wanting to be sponsored and seeking that kind of validation or needing to get free boards so you can continue to skate. And there is something very, I think, like in the case of almost every skateboarder, there is something that happens when you are validated and you are given this opportunity. Things accelerate, you know, in most cases. And so you're there to capture that. There are so many photos both in the show and in the book that, you know, like were, your view and your angle of the cover shot that everyone knows. I think those are so important. That's such an important part of that story. You know, like there are more than one photographer on that shoot. There's a lot of stuff going on the side that people never saw.
Yeah. But it wasn't a shoot.
Right.
It was just Henry's doing a nose grind on the big block, and I'm like sitting there taking it, and I'm going through the archive, and I'm like, he's got blood on his knee.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's the same photo that's not the same photo. That's the same moment that Kevin Thatcher shot Henry from right over there.
Yeah. I think, is it the same day? Now I don't know if I'm tripping or not, but we have a photo in the show of him doing a frontside lip slide on that block.
Could be the same day.
It might be the same day.
Might be the same day.
And what's so sick about that photo is you can see the paint on the bottom of his board, like trailing him, because it's probably the first frontside lip slide he's attempted on that thing, and those ledges weren't waxed, and you can just there's a whole like backstory of that paint going on the ledge, and just how raw that spot is, and also that this is the place where all these things are being done for the first time. You know, so there's value in that story too. So I guess I also want to talk about just the span of some of these characters, you know, like your friends, and the people that you encountered. I mean, we go from like your earliest childhood friends that you started skating with
for the show.
Yeah,
yes. For the show. Yeah.
All the way to Hieroglyphics and Dell.
Yeah.
You know, so you have like Aaron Curry, James Kiltrick, Ibuseta, Mikey, Javante, Opio, like Dell,
Tajay, Dell,
like De La Soul.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so that's like an incredible, we talked about a little bit before, but I think that's such a cool moment of like, this is again, like mixtape culture.
Yeah.
We all we had access to Burnt.
Yeah.
You know, immediately after Carol's
and everyone recorded Souls of Mischief off of the virtual reality tape. I mean, I think for me, it was so important to put Hyro in this show. I think early on, you know, in the original impetus of the show, and you mentioned it, but I'll mention it. You're co-curating the show. So we've been talking about this together, and you've been helping with shaping the narrative and making sure that there's a narrative there, and really helping check the work, so to speak, but making sure that story appeals and is clear. You know, my Right Before My Eyes show at Heavyweight, I loved it because it kind of drafted off of what I did with my niece, Michaela Chernowski-Holland, who co-curated Recording the Ride with me at the Museum of the Moving Image. And, you know, I tracked down all these fucking artifacts from skaters, right? Lance Mountain's board and shirt from Bones Brigade video show, which is the most proud achievement that I've ever had in a curatorial standpoint. That those were on the wall of the Museum of the Moving Image. And so in my Right Before My Eyes show, I wanted to have all these artifacts and all this ephemera and all this stuff there. And that material really resonated. And I was like, you know what? I want to have that original Hyro demo tape on the wall. And I want to have this because that was so like, I got that demo tape because I was driving Mikey home, because I stole it from him. I recorded it that night. I told him I didn't record it, but I had now I had the recording that he recorded from Javante, that Javante got from Dell.
And I'm sure Jamie Telch got a dub from you.
For sure.
That made its way to Austin, Texas.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
Exactly. So for me, it was like when we were in the early stages of this San Francisco show, it was like, well, is it Right Before My Eyes / Epicenter? And I think, you know, there was one thing and you were like, no, it's Epicenter. And you can borrow some of the elements that are featured in Right Before My Eyes, but it's Epicenter. And so if it is Epicenter and the focus of the show lands at Embarcadero and we really unpack tons of photos that aren't even in the book,
right,
which I think was super important for me because I'm still, you know, I want Aaron Curry on the wall of this show. I want James's nose slide on the big block in this show. But I have to have Hyro in this show, you know, so much so that, like, you know, when I was shooting photos for their website, the park right behind the fountain, you know, we shot all these like product shots of everyone wearing the gear right there.
Yeah.
But Hyro is like the ricochet that comes out of EMB for me. And in an interesting way, you know, Hyro is what sort of started my career and me taking myself a little bit more seriously as a director. After Mike Chernaski died and I was looking for, purpose, I've talked a lot about all of this narrative, but that's what Right Before My Eyes is.
Yeah.
A kid from Palo Alto grows up, experiences skateboarding, has this incredible experience making these videos, and moves on to connecting with this group that provides the same level of purpose in storytelling and documentation. And so, the Epicenter show, the art show, will really show those characters from Palo Alto, those textures. Some of my San Jose friends like Jason Adams and Salman, who are core, to my maturation with filming. And that comes from Greg Carroll specifically, that he hired me, kind of through Venture and then Dogtown and Think to make those videos and be a part of that, which is really a huge part of my career starting, And then that goes into this sort of video Plan B era just for a brief moment. And then we come back and really unpack San Francisco into Embarcadero. But it's, all those people, I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but I still think of them all as great friends. I don't remember, maybe I do remember the last time I talked to Jason Adams, but it was a while ago. And I owe him a re-edit of something that I haven't done.
Yeah.
And I feel bad, but I still think back. I'm like, I love Jason.
Yeah.
I love him. Well, I spent so much time with him. I loved filming with him. I loved, shooting, all that stuff. So all those people on the wall, I feel like I have a relationship with, and I feel like I have a tether to.
And we're also sort of talking about a time, not to sound like too much of an old head, but I think it's important when we're talking about skateboarding in the 90s. It's a pre-internet, almost digital time.
Yeah.
And you had to go to places to meet people.
Yeah.
You had to, cities offered something that suburbs didn't offer.
Yeah.
Like cities introduce you to ideas and people and tricks and fashion and music that you could not have access to if you did not go to those places.
Yeah.
And I think, thinking back to how we began this conversation with this new plans for Embarcadero and like what this plaza could possibly mean to people, how it talks about the contribution of San Francisco and its global import. This is the testament to that time.
And what you're making me think right now is two really clear thoughts I just want to say. One, I go, what is my life like? So I get kind of an assignment from Mike Chernaski to film Mike Carroll. Like I get that assignment. Like I'd given him footage for the Planet Earth video. So he's like, okay, Jake's a good filmer, a good editor. I'm still doing more stuff. And he's like, I want you to go film Mike Carroll. And Mike just gets his pro model and all this. So now I'm filming Mikey. Now we could have filmed and never ended up at EMB.
Right.
But there's something about the fact that we did end up at EMB. And then there's something about the fact that all of these people ended up at EMB. So there's something about the fact that Javante ended up in EMB, and Javante's mom was a model for Vogue and all these things. So he's got an exquisite taste.
Yep.
And he's like just walking style, and he has great taste in music, and now he has Dell's demo tape. Like I like Dell. Prior to that moment, I definitely had his album.
Yeah.
But like I didn't get the demo tape until that moment there.
Yeah.
So what my thought is like I don't really prescribe to the thing where people say like, well, if that never happened, where would I be?
Right.
But I know for a fact, because that happened, all of these other things happened.
Right.
And I think the more I got into this book project and the more I lived in the work and have meditated on this moment and started to talk about this moment, like this is my like beginning of blossoming,
right,
where I'm like felt purpose, felt connected, but like I wasn't going to get the Dell demo, the Souls demo in Palo Alto.
No.
I wasn't going to get, there was no way that tape ever gets in my hand if I stay in Palo Alto. It only happens if I go to Embarcadero.
Yeah.
So to double down on what you just said, when you take these places that are hubs for people to congregate, with activity, social activity that maybe has a rigorous component to it, but maybe now this is too specific. You lose the ability for people to create moments of connection.
Yeah.
So if you just make a grass patch and it's fucking Dolores Park, like, so everyone has they all have their headphones on, and they're sunbathing in the middle of the day.
Yeah. It's passive activity.
And they're not interested in talking to their neighbor.
Right. Because
we don't agree on the politics of this city. So I think that, a lovely theme to talk about why preservation is important, why storytelling is important, is because we can identify that, yes, Embarcadero impacted skateboarding at large.
Yeah.
But it also created this undeniable momentum of style, of music, of taste, and of trends that impacted people's lives in ways that we couldn't even begin to calculate.
Yep.
And it only happened because the activity kept going.
Yeah. I mean, this is also an important time I had a really eye-opening conversation with Carol about this, where we had a call about what the plaza could possibly be, and because I wanted to do my due diligence and like, hey, if like Carl Watson and Chico Brenes and Mike Carroll don't want to preserve the bricks, they want something else, I'm going to listen to them. They were the people who built this scene.
Yeah.
Their input matters. When James Kelch says, this scene was over in 1994, it was dead, like that means something. And Mikey said, like as long as there's an urban plaza where kids like we did could meet up and skate in that area, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And it's important to say that like we're not talking about a bygone era and a style of skateboarding that is dead and people can't relate to. We're talking about a place and a group of people at a time that created the culture that kids still participate in. Like what we're talking about is not the past. We're talking about this culture that happened and continues to happen.
Yeah.
So like, yes, I want a hard skate plaza that's skatable. It doesn't have to be a recreation of the C block. It just has to be a place where.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's in the
exactly.
In the city.
But it would be really cool if it had maybe an area that had an anecdote or a quote.
Yeah.
From someone who makes you say to yourself, "Who was that?"
Yep. Yeah.
So that in 20 years from now, some kid could go who's skating, hopefully skating there at a plaza in hallowed ground.
Yeah. I mean, there's that, that great Gary Kamiya book, Cool Gray City of Love, about a poem someone wrote about Embarcadero. Like I think about James Kelch's quote about just watching the fog roll in and sitting in the middle of the plaza.
Yeah.
That's our Cool Gray City of Love moment. It's that needs to be inscribed somewhere in stone in that plaza, to let people know that,
and make a square, just cut a little bit of the bricks and put it in just a square and put it on the side of that thing. It was there, it was skated.
Yeah. But that's the great thing about a publication and about a physical object like a book is that you, like we joked about, you must touch it. You have to turn the pages.
Yeah.
It presupposes an activity that's a little more active than simply watching something on a screen or looking at it on your phone, And so the book is the important middle ground between the action that's being represented and commemorated in the book and the sort of like contemplation of the history of what it means.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the show and the reception, of course, Adidas coming in and supporting it the way they are is incredible because that helps with the amplification. At the end of the day, we just want to amplify this moment. And that's not just for me. I mean, if the book doesn't sell, I'm cool. Like, I'm fine with it because I made it because I felt like I had to make it and it was the right thing at the right time. And my good friend Ted, I trusted you, that it was the right time to do it.
Let's talk a little bit before we wrap up about just like the contributors.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. So I mean, I think what I want to talk about first would just be the format of the book. And I have a couple little things here that are kind of references, but
Cool.
So Alexander Hansford is this, incredible magician friend of mine, who's also a designer. And we did the first book together right before my eyes. And when I was thinking about the Embarcadero book, I said, I think it would be cool, maybe Greg said it would be cool if it was just photos. And I was like, yeah, but I kind of want to, I kind of feel like I want essays in there, and I want some interviews and some, excerpts. And I had bought them a gift of this Colin Greenwood book, How to Disappear. It's a Radiohead book, and it's a slip sleeve book. And what's cool about it is there's two companions to the book. There's this little paperback that's just like textures, which is really lovely. This little,
yeah.
And then there's this hardcover book here that's photographs. These are all his photographs from the making of one of their records. And Alexander says, well, what if we do it like the Radiohead book? And I was like, well, yeah, that's a fucking great idea.
Yeah.
And then he, mocked up this, this brick, embossed, colorway, and that would be the hardcover. So we very quickly got to, okay, hardcover book, only photos, and then softcover book of writing. And of course, in his colorway, he has the brick thing. And all I could think about was these, my prized possessions, Do the Distance and Loose Change by Jim Thiebaud.
Yeah.
One of these has an incredible little note in here. If I'm remembering it correctly. Sorry, this is so minutia. This book belongs to Jake Rosenberg, and if you stole this, I hope you feel bad. And then I signed it, Jake Rosenberg.
Nice.
But these were books I got when I worked for Deluxe or High Speed Productions back in the day. But if you take this gray color,
sure, it's the mortar.
Yeah. And then if you put it on top of the brick. So the book is a hardcover, photographs only, and then a soft cover that's full of essays and these interviews. And then that comes with the book. I have a very dear friend, Eric Merrell, who's an artist, very fine artist. Mm-hmm. His mother used to babysit me when I was a child.
Cool.
And he kind of found skateboarding on his own when he lived on the East Coast. And then when he moved back to the West Coast, he used to skate my ramp when I wasn't home, and I used to leave things for him. He would go through the dog door of my house. A lot of people actually did this. I would leave things in the room where I would edit, which was our TV room, and you had to go through a dog door to get in there. I'd leave old boards for him and stuff like that, or maybe footage for him to watch. So Eric holds a very dear place in my heart, and he's just an incredible fine artist. And he's a California painter who paints landscapes, and usually desert landscapes. But recently he started painting a series of images of skateboard spots. And I asked him if he would paint an image of Embarcadero. And this That's was cool. The beautiful image that he made, which I think is really, really gorgeous. And you'll get this with the book as well. And then I always feel weird, charging prices for things, because I'm like, I want it just to be free. People should just have it. So if I'm going to charge, $80 for the book, I want people to get something. So I also have a fold-out poster that's all frame grabs.
Yep.
And, one of the original design inspirations is one of the posters here in my office from the movie The Conversation, which actually has a scene at the bottom of one of the buildings in the Embarcadero Plaza. Yeah. At the very, very end.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, this is nerding out too hard about The Conversation, but it also begins in a plaza. Yes. It begins at Union Square.
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
In some ways, the moment that people stop skating Embarcadero, they go to Union Square. Yeah. And in The Conversation, the sort of sinister person that's hired
the Transamerica building around there. So there's a fold-out poster that is all frame grabs.
Yep.
And that was, something that felt really important to me. So the hardcover has, a number of photographs, and then it has a number of spreads that just unpack hundreds of frame grabs, which to me is like the language that is most people know from me at Embarcadero.
Right. I think the frame grabs, I would assume too, that part of that's coming out of virtual, right? Like the cover of virtual reality.
Yeah.
And like, that design.
I mean, and Big Brother, to be honest.
And the
Big
era,
Brother really kind of like made us all feel comfortable. And actually, in Big Brother, I used to think that I shot long lens because the frame grabs for Big Brother, but then I found a bunch of long lens footage pre-Big Brother, and I was like, okay, I was on the right track before then.
Yeah.
But so the paperback book, which is text, Kevin Wilkins, who's a dear friend, love him so very much. Just an incredible voice in skateboarding.
Yeah.
Incredible heart for skateboarding. In many ways, I think he is like a similar to a Lance Mountain Pulse.
Sure.
For skateboarding, but from a writing standpoint. He was helping me when I was trying to figure out what my first book would be, and eventually it became Right Before My Eyes with some elements that maybe kind of were similar. But we talked a lot in the pandemic and pre-pandemic about that. And I was like, that'd be amazing. Even though he's not a West Coast guy, that'd be amazing if Kevin, contributed something. Mm-hmm. And then Anthony Pappalardo, incredible writer, incredible cultural mind. He just understands so many facets of the culture, from the core skating to the hardcore scene to hip hop, and he loves it all.
Yeah.
And Anthony has also been a sounding board for a lot of my ideas. I have a small group of friends who I share very candidly with and send things to, and I'm like, am I on the right track? Does this sound right? And they always say yes, which is so sweet of them. But I wanted Anthony to contribute a piece because I knew that he would unpack something special. And of course, his analogy with, CBGB not intending to become CBGB when it opened was beautiful. And then, of course, you contributed an essay, which felt so important because I knew your horsepower of talking about the history and the context and that momentum of how something comes to be. So those three essays are in the book. Then we have the interview with Shrugi that I talked about. I did a short interview with Eric Merrell because I feel like his art is included, and I think it's important. He does have an outsider's perspective of EMB. And he went a number of times, so I think that's really cool. He also paints, skate spots and paints California landscapes, and I just wanted to get a little bit of the root of that art. And then we have the roundtable interview, which is a beast. Yeah. So, initially it was like a brick to grout. Yeah, it was exactly. Like the hard cover was this big and the soft cover was this.
Maybe it's less the grout and it's actually one of the ledges.
No, it's actually, they're about equal sizes now. Yeah. So, I mean, there's, 100 plus pages in the paperback and 100 or so pages in the photo book, but that's the package of it. And it comes in a slip sleeve so it can sit nice on the shelf. And, I have a lot of friends who are far more talented than me that have these relationships with these publishing companies, and they make these beautiful books with Super Labo, and I don't know how to pitch my work to somebody else because I still feel like it's not great. I'm not fishing here or doing the idiot savant thing, but I still just don't feel like on its surface, like everyone would get it.
I think people will get it, but I also,
but I'm saying, so to me, self-publishing is amazing, but you have to have the right team.
Yep.
And Alexander has relationships with the printers. He knows the paper stock. He knows all these details. We're so meticulous about it, and it's just incredibly rewarding. And the goal is just to kind of break even, and maybe sell enough so that it could fund the next project or get the next project off the ground.
Yeah, I mean, like everything in the book itself is a passion project. Yeah. Right? Like this is you were generous with your time to film and document this scene back then. This isn't, by no means is this your full-time job. Yeah. This is just a means of celebrating a time and a place and a group of people. And, it is not the only document of this time, but it is an important, unique document. And so I'm glad it exists.
Yeah.
And
Me too.
What an honor to be part of it.
Well, you earn your part of it. It's an honor to talk with you at length about this. This to me, that it was one of these things where it's like, oh, we should do a podcast around the show. I hate the term podcast because I'm not trying to compete on a level with podcasts, but I felt like I wanted to have a conversational outlet to unpack stories so that, in 5 years when the show's not up, someone could go listen to people and see images and see things that are directly related to this moment. So I think we have some really interesting people who are central to the story, who maybe are, younger and newer as well in some cases. And I also want to just use this platform to be able to take people to the opening of the show, get, responses like, I was thinking to myself, Jackson Roth is the young filmmaker who shoots this and will edit this, and he'll be up there documenting the show. And I was talking to Jackson, and I'm like, why don't we just go like we have the microphones, we have the branding. Why don't we just walk over to Embarcadero and talk to people? How can that not be a video and audio podcast? Like we don't have to sit in a studio, and I'm not trying to compete with any of those things, but to me, it's like, I think it's pretty liberating that if some cool people are at the show who aren't anywhere else, let's have snackable things. Yes. So
could I ask you on the subject of stories? Maybe what's your favorite story or moment from that time that may not be in the book that just kind of happened around? I know it's a hard question, and Jackson, you can edit this out if we don't get a good answer, but I'm just sort of thinking, like, what is something that you would want people to know about that time that may not have been apparent in the video footage, or that might be hinted at but not fully explored in the project?
That's such a good question.
Yeah, sorry if it's a stumper.
No, it's a stumper, but like, it takes me to, when we were going through the transcripts from the big round table, when James said this one passage, I was like, that's the ender.
Yeah.
And as I was reading it, there was something that Rick Ibiceta said that actually became the ender. And it's in skate vernacular, is like, they're both like silk hammers, right? Like they're both just velvet
after
hammers.
Black hammers, you maybe.
They're just, it's like, fade to black, hear the sound of the skating, slow-mo, big trick, land, fade back to black, and you're just sitting in the emotion of it. But Rick, I don't want to spoil the soundbite because I think that it's important to read to that moment and hear it for yourself in your head. But what Rick talked about was just how analog that moment was, and just how much of an effort it took to be someplace if you wanted to be at that place. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of that is the thing that I would want people to know.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends, Damon Ayers, Andrew Huberman, James Telch, and Aaron Curry, those guys like came in my car with me sometimes because I was older than some of them, because I didn't want to be alone.
Yeah.
And it was a long drive, but I had to drive. Mm-hmm. And then I got there, I had to find parking. I mean, God knows how many parking tickets I got. But man, if you got the fucking spot right at the front in the little place where you could actually park, or sometimes if someone was too bummed to skate, they'd just sit in the car and wave off the meter maid. But I think in that time, in that place, you really had to make the effort to be someplace. There was no Uber. There were no cell phones. Mikey also has an anecdote that I don't want to spoil as well, about using the public payphone at the spot, which is absolutely extraordinary. And that, to him, that's what he wanted people to know about how inventive we were back then.
I mean, if I could jump in, like, I think that's almost, I've done a little bit of background interviews on some of the spots I've focused on: Pulaski Park, Love Park, et cetera, Banks. And quite often there's a payphone.
Yeah.
And people have the number, or they can call that phone and they can be like, hey, who's at Pulaski right now? Who's at Embarcadero? Who's skating? What just happened down the 7? And that's this kind of,
I mean,
crazy instantaneity in use of technology at the time, but also it speaks to a time when, what's so revolutionary about your generation and your presence there and the people that you skated with was this kind of is the first time, as you said, like that latchkey kids found and asserted a place in these urban spaces.
Yeah, it was. You could argue, Del Mar, these other places,
those are skate parks.
Those are skate parks.
Yeah.
You pay admission to get in.
Yeah.
There's like adults there that are supervising everything. There's fences around them.
And this is also a time when in the 80s, like the inner city and urban, it was like a metonym, a code name for danger, for gangs, for
and ultimately that's why, to me, James Kelch is a real hero of the story.
Absolutely.
He was Shrugi had a beautiful line. He called him a sentinel.
Yeah.
And because I called him a guardian, and Shrugi said, he was like a guardian, a sentinel. And I was just like, the only time I've ever heard sentinel used is in the X-Men for those big bad guys. But then I looked up the word to understand it, and I was like, he James protected so many people and also helped a lot of people understand the right way to do things.
Yeah. I mean, I think every scene has those people who are comfortable in the place, who know the place. Yeah. And it certainly doesn't hurt when that person is the person who can ollie the highest in the city.
and such a weird, he has the most amazing weird high ollie ever. Yeah. And I hope he makes it to the opening.
Well, he's in the book and he's in the show.
Yeah, he sure is. I think that's it. I think again, thank you again to Adidas Skateboarding. To GCS Agency, Victor Gonzalez, who owns the gallery, who has been an incredible host and collaborator with us putting the show together. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, Jacob. I mean, there's 2 venues. There's 100 California Street. Yep. We're gonna have like a huge chunk of this building that's right next to the epicenter of the spot. Yeah. To create this incredible visual profile, and then the show itself is going to be interactive. There's going to be... I
mean, you mentioned like talking to someone on the payphone. What trick did someone do? I mean, I have listening stations at the show where you can listen to me talking to Sal Barbier, telling him that Mike Carroll did a trick down the 7.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So I think, and I think for the first time ever, I will really put out a lot of raw footage around Embarcadero and make that an integral part of the show.
That's going to be incredible.
The goal of the first episode of the podcast really is to kind of stir the pot and make you all interested in the book and in the show, just to tell you what's happening. I believe the pre-orders are starting today, and that's just at jacobrosenberg.tv/epicenter. That's EPICENTER, and that's JACOBROSENBERG.tv/epicenter.
We'll put it up on the screen. Boom.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. You're so good at this, Ted.
Maybe.
That's it. Until we see you guys again, thank you for listening and tuning in. More of this to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you. Do we shake hands? Good job, Ted.
I think we did it.
Thank you. Yeah, we did it.